I'm Lindsay, and welcome to the Intuitive Psychologist podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've been in the mental health field for over 15 years. During my spiritual awakening, I've realized that psychology is really missing the mark. I believe that traditional therapy combined with spirituality can actually lead to long-term healing and growth. And I've actually had the luxury of seeing this happen within my own private practice, where I've tried to incorporate the two together. My intention for this podcast is to discuss my opinions about spirituality and therapy, and I like to do it in a fun way. My hope is that I'll inspire other people to explore different ways to improve their lives. But I'd also like to normalize what many people have been going through or are currently going through, so that you can know that you're not alone and that you're not crazy. And maybe along the way I can inspire a few therapists along the way to actually think outside the box and to offer their own version of intuitive healing. If this is interesting to you, then join me on this journey as we try to have fun and explore an informal way to bridge the gap between psychology and spirituality. Hello again, friends. I just want to say a very heartily thank you to everyone for being so loving and supporting with the episode prior to this, episode number 7. That was by far the toughest one to actually record and then sort of feel afterwards. So between my husband and my friends and many of the listeners reaching out saying how much that episode meant to them, and my vulnerability, and how many other folks have similar stories, it just really warmed my heart, because it was a really tough one. That night sucked after recording it. The emotions that came up, I never thought that I would cry on a podcast, let alone this early into recording, like shit. So that night was really tough. I'm glad I didn't pull it down, because I did think about that, because I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I just bared my soul to this degree. I cannot believe I cried. I cannot believe that I shared so many intimate details about some of the most difficult pieces of my life and some of the most embarrassing things ever. But hearing from my friends saying how much they had resonated with that story of especially the sexual stuff, that they too had very similar relationships or scenarios with their parents. Some of the listeners that reached out to me and gave me such wonderful support made everything that I went through last week very much worth it. I had a very shitty week. I was emotional pretty much the entire week. I think over the last few days have been the best out of the entire week, but dealing with the memories of what I talked about on the last episode, and I guess like having it be told out loud is not only like very raw, to know that others will listen, even down the road. I mean, past just this week, obviously, I hope that more than just 16 people listen to my podcast. And knowing that maybe in a few months' time, maybe even a year's time, 5 years down the road, when that episode becomes a distant memory, that somebody may come across it and bad things could come from it. It was tough to have it out there. Tough to admit the things that I have done wrong and the things that I said that have been hurtful. And so that was a really rough week to sort of relive in a timeline fashion as to, again, some of the hardest moments in my life. I posted on Instagram about how sharing our vulnerable truth, our traumas, are important, that we share with those that can reflect back to us love and compassion and support and understanding, because when we share our trauma with somebody that either doesn't know what to do with trauma, which many of us don't, it's very uncomfortable, because if you haven't sat in your own trauma, you just want to escape, right? You just want whoever you care about to escape that pain. You don't want them to feel this pain. And so that can be very hurtful to somebody that's trying to share a traumatic experience, trying to be vulnerable with somebody. Other people will, through no fault of their own, try to minimize it, right? Again, to avoid their own experiences of pain, or they're wanting you to not have to experience this pain. And others can be coming from a more hurtful space and say things that can really cause harm. And obviously, in last episode, you heard some of those moments where I have heard that from family members, saying very harmful things in moments of extreme vulnerability. So I'm so grateful that for at least this week, when I felt the most raw and vulnerable, that nobody said anything to me that made me feel ashamed, made me feel bad about what I've done or what I said, or the fact that I even said it out loud. So I really appreciate that. And just know that when you share your truth, there is so much that you can heal. And by far, I am not healed after a week, but I am feeling a little bit better. But you can heal so much by sharing with others that you know are safe, and that you know will listen to you. And I wouldn't just do that willy-nilly with just anyone. Be sure that people have earned that trust with you already, that there has been a little bit of a dance, of vulnerability between you and somebody, whether it's a partner or a friend or a family member, that if you're going to share a little bit, that they too can either hold space for you, or they too can share a little bit of their own vulnerability to help you feel safe. And then as you open up a little bit more, the hope is that they would open up a little bit more. And it's that dance to make sure that who you're sharing with is safe, because it can very much be very damaging. And had I shared that story 5, 10, 15, even 20 years ago publicly, I would have been wrecked. And it would have taken me more than 5 or 6 days to feel back to a semblance of normal. But I'm not normal. And I don't really know what today's going to be about. It's been a stressful period to figure out what I want to talk about, going back and forth, constantly having imposter syndrome, then wanting to talk about manifestation and how, manifesting out of the hell that I had been in with relationships into this beautiful marriage that I have now. That sounds beautiful, and I probably will one day, hopefully in the very near future. And then I thought, it's safe. Let me talk about my lung collapses and, turning lemons into lemonade. And I plan to do that as well. And so I don't really know what today's going to look like, but I figure I will continue a little bit with this stream of thought, and maybe it's all over the place. And I know many people love that about certain podcasts, like they just love fun banter with the two co-hosts, or, veering off of topic with the stream of consciousness. And so I don't know what today's going to look like, but I guess you and I are on the adventure together. Had I shared all that 10, 20 years ago, I would have been a hot mess more than I was this week, but that was really tough. I was very much in my head, very much not in my power, very much in a space of a traumatic sort of reenactment of the emotions of the trauma, the self-doubt, judgment, harassment. How could I? The moments of glee when I had people reach out to me with love and support over sharing such tough content. And then at times feelings of abandonment when I had hoped certain people would have taken the time to listen to the podcast because I shared it with some groups, and there were some folks that were super supportive and listened and gave me feedback, and you could tell that kind of isn't the topic that you don't provide somebody with some sort of feedback beyond glad you were vulnerable and shared, like actual feedback. So then I dealt with some abandonment feelings of like, I let people know that this was a really tough topic and how much I really would appreciate their love and support. And then it was like a nothing burger. And that kind of brought up a lot of the abandonment shit that I think it feels like I'm going to deal with forever, for this entire lifetime. God, I would hope not. But the abandonment really sucks. Then I get into my head of, God, you're so entitled to think that people should drop their busy time, their busy schedules to listen to your podcast and to provide you feedback and or support. But the reality is I'm not entitled to anything. And this is my current lesson. I think that I am struggling with the most is this continued feeling of abandonment and continued feeling like, despite my perception, which others may view as different, but my perception is that I've been supportive and loving and caring and all this stuff to others, and then when it comes to be my turn, it's like, meh, meh, meh. But then am I just expecting too much from people? Fuck, man. Okay, all right, I guess we're going here again. See, my whole plan was, okay, so last episode was really deep, and so why not make the next one lighthearted and fun? Because, god damn, that was a roller coaster. But like I said, I've been going back and forth all day about, my original topic was going to be about manifesting love and abundance of wealth and money. Not that I'm rich and not that I have love all figured out, but I do have an amazing relationship with my husband. But I don't know, I just said I would come on here and just be real. So I guess the abandonment thing is the real piece, because again, I'm going to get ugly and I'm going to admit that I fuck it up. I fuck it up a lot. I think I hinted earlier in this podcast about feeling abandoned or very alone as a child. So nothing to say against my mother or my sister. You've heard my story about my father. But fuck. Okay, I'm doing it. I feel abandoned a lot. I felt really abandoned as a kid. I spent far too much time alone. My sister was 5 years older, so as I had said before, it's two totally different age ranges, right? I'm 5, she's 10. I'm in elementary school, she's in middle school. I'm in middle school, she's in high school. I'm in high school, she's in college. That was just sort of doomed from the get-go. We would have had to work a million times hard. A million times harder than would have been natural, even in a healthy household with a healthy father. And so she had her own friend group. I wasn't cool. I just wanted her to like me and love me. And I wasn't cool. I get it. As an adult, I get it. As a child, hurt. Now, as for my mom, right? This is a different generation. This is a different era. In that time, it was so encouraged for you to just let your child be. In fact, in that time, parents were being told by not only physicians, but by their own family and their friends, that if a baby cries in their crib, you just let them cry. You let them cry it out, because if you don't, then you'll make them into a weak human, right? And so to give them love and affection would be creating weak humans. Now we know in 2020 and, for a while now, that we just don't do that to a child, that a child is crying because it has a need that needs to be met, and it is dependent upon at least one primary caregiver to provide all of their needs. So food, diaper changes, and most importantly is cuddles and love, and for the mother and child to make eye contact, and for the child to be wrapped up into the mom's breast. And it doesn't even have to be with nursing, but just held really close to their heart, so that empathy and bond is created between the mother and the child, where the mom and the child almost become like one, where the mom is so in tune with the child that it can tell what it needs right off the bat. And in my parents' generation and earlier, that was not encouraged. You were encouraged to leave your child in the crib and let them cry it out. And that actually creates emotional abandonment. And so none of this is to put fault or blame on my sister or my mom, and that I understand that the product of our relationship is really a generational issue. Okay, so just in case they listen to this, or any of their family or friends ever listen to these episodes, I actually do not hold them any hard feelings about the past as it relates to this. I really don't, okay? I really, in my logical brain, understand this, but in my physiological and emotional, mental, physical space, that section of me still hurts deeply, because I remember spending countless hours out in nature, which I loved. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, and I still, like, to this day, I love being in nature, and I cannot wait until I live in nature again, where there's actually trees and grass and trails and beauty and all that stuff, and lakes and rivers and all that stuff. But at the time when I was a child, I did it not as much because I loved nature. I did, but I did it also because I had nothing else to do and no one else to be with. And at the time, I had friends in the neighborhood up until middle school, when I got bullied and exiled from that friend group. But obviously you don't spend all day every day with your friends. And so literally it felt like all the time I was either playing a video game, or I was out in nature mixed in with spending time with friends. And I just remember the deep loneliness, like I'd mentioned with my father, of like being like, hey, I'll go play baseball with you or football or whatever, I'll toss a ball around with you just to get you to like me and just to get you to want to spend time with me. And same, with, obviously, like I wanted to be like my sister, thinking that if I did what she did, that she would like me, and not so much, or that if I did the activities she liked to do, that maybe that would create a bond between us, and not so much. And then, with my mom, it was like, hey, can we go play games? Can we go do this? And it was like, no. Now, in my heart of all hearts, especially as a therapist, I actually look back on those times and I actually see that my mom was depressed, and that she, has likely been battling her own depression and anxiety over her lifetime. And when you're depressed, you don't have energy, desire, motivation, or anything to spend time with people. And for any level of continued feelings of disconnect, I think, again, it is this sort of pattern being repeated that she was taught for so long, that you don't form these type of relationships with your children. A mother's place is to be a mom, but to take your child to the grocery store or to have them with you at all times seemed like too much. So again, no fault. No fault. I'm just speaking from how it felt like for me as a kid of feeling abandoned. And so I think that this created this feelings of emptiness, unbelonging, unworthiness, 100% feeling unlovable, not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, all of that. Enough. Which obviously would then start me on the trajectory of picking relationships that would just reenact that abandonment, emotional abandonment, physical abandonment, you name it. And there is such a draw right now to protect them because they are alive and they aren't here to tell this side of the story. So I'm going to do my best to continue with my truth while honoring and respecting them because I love them very dearly. And I'm very grateful for the relationships that we have. But it hurts. And I think that if anything, it sets me up to detect and sense abandonment when there may not even be any. And it set me up for struggling to find out how to relate to children, my own stepchildren, because I didn't want to continue that relationship pattern of, I'm here, I'm cooking your food, I may drive you to school in the morning, and then that's it. And I did for a few years with my stepkids. I didn't like it. But I felt so triggered. I felt so triggered and jealous of the relationship that I saw with my husband and his kids. They are so close and they do so much together. And if he needed to run an errand, he would just take them. And they're guys, so they had a lot of shared common interests, so that made it a little bit tougher. Like, if it was a girl, I'd know, okay, we can go get our nails done, go to the mall, go shopping. We can, I have at least a repertoire of things I would like to do, but then to do the double-edged sword of okay, well, how do I parent when I don't want to continue that seeming emotional abandonment of a child? And I never grew up with boys aside from my father, and he didn't really show me what it was like to, engage in guy activities that would have at least given me a couple of things to try. And then I felt like the outsider coming in. And so that was a struggle for me to figure that out. So I can easily not be included in conversations, or obviously they reach out to their mom and dad. And even though I am a step parent, I am not the parent, so I get left out of many of the conversations. They have gotten so much better, by the way. It's coming up to 8 years that I've been in their life, and they definitely include me a lot more than they ever have before. So it's a work in progress, and I'm so appreciative of that. But there are even moments where I still find myself triggered to know that when they are traveling or get deployed or something to that effect, and I'm not part of the group that gets to know that they've landed safely and that they're okay. It's a bummer. And so it's a constant sort of triggering, but and so the abandonment thing is still very prevalent for me, and how it's showing up for me right now is okay, that's too hard to talk about right now. So let's go back to family because I guess I want to I don't know, it's so weird. So I guess it's a back and forth of abandonment Or maybe it's like I tell my clients all the time, it's like an onion that keeps being peeled, and they're like, well, you and I worked on this and I got so much better, and then now I feel like I've taken 5 steps back, and did I even change? And it's like, yes, you did. It's just now you're going a layer deeper, right? And that you are understanding this wound at a deeper level, you're healing it at a deeper level. The joy that will come from this healing will be even deeper and greater because you've gone to this deeper level. But here I am, and I'm thinking, wait, I haven't always felt abandoned. But maybe it's because one form of abandonment versus a different form of abandonment. And I picked a lot of partners, as you could tell by the last one, that abandoned me. Betrayal, I think, is a form of abandonment. And emotionally unavailable, that's the main one, right? Like, we're always told, you date your dad. And so I did, and emotionally he was not available. And emotionally he was quite cruel at times, and at times loving and doting. And so many of my early relationships were pretty much the same guy, just different packaging, tall, dark hair, leaning more on the narcissistic end of things, boundary violation, my high school boyfriend, it was one where, it was one of my very first, like, super deep relationships with a guy. And up until that point, I felt very undesirable. I felt very unloved by guys. And then I met this one, and we had a relationship for a couple of years. And I felt like I chose him over my girlfriends far too often. And I regret that. I really regret that, because they still to this day are far more important than he will ever be. Luckily, I'm still friends with all of them. But yeah, I wanted his love more. And so I abandoned them. Yeah. And so I would want to be with him. If he wanted to be with me, I would be more willing to drop everything with anyone to go be with him, because he, in that moment, filled that void, that emotional void of, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, people don't want to be around me, not my girlfriends, but just, again, family mimicked into my relationships. And it's so crazy getting into the woo-woo stuff. Like, he was just like my ex-husband in a lot of ways, that if I had a boundary, he would guilt trip me out of it. He got angry at me. Never got violent with me. But there was one moment, I don't remember what we were fighting about. I just remember it was one of those things where he and all of his guy friends had, like, gotten hotel rooms, and they got all their computers together, and they were playing this massive game. So envision mid to late 90s. I don't fucking know what kind of shit that they were doing, but it was a thing that guys were doing at the time. So anyone of that era may be screaming at me going, it's called this, Lindsay. Well, yeah, I don't know what the hell that is, but they were there. And so instead of me, like, maybe going to spend time, like close, intimate, loving time with my girlfriends, I was willing to take any moment with him that I could. And I was at this hotel while he was hanging out with his friends, so that I could sit there while he was doing his thing, right? Because that was oddly meant more to me than actually spending real quality time with my girlfriends. But we got into a fight of some sort, and I was like leaving the hotel room or the hotel area, and he was running after me, and I don't remember what happened, but it was so weird. And I don't know if this is like part of that psychic stuff that I don't know if I am psychic or not, but maybe I was starting to get glimpses of stuff. But like in that moment, I thought he was going to hit me. I think I'd flinched. And he didn't hit me. But I had flinched. And he was like, "What, did you think I was going to hit you?" or something like that. Granted, this was over 20 years ago, but, and so, he didn't hit me. We got into a fight, whatever. And then, I went away to college. I was 1 year older than him. I went to college. He was a total douche canoe after my lung had collapsed the very first time. And I was in the hospital, and he was guilt tripping me over something, and I was crying, and I'm like, why would you pressure me or guilt trip me or like talk down to me like you are right now, given that I'm literally in the hospital. I was in the hospital for a week. And I remember like one of the nurses coming in, and I was crying on the phone with him, like, why are you talking to me like this when I'm at my most vulnerable state? I just don't get it. And the nurse was like mouthing to me, like, just fucking hang up, like telling me, like, you don't have to take this, right? And I was too much of a pushover, and everyone else's feelings, especially if it was a romantic one that could help to repair my relationship with my father, all of those meant more to me than my own feelings and my own self-worth. And so I was just like, I just took it, even though I hated it, and I resented him for treating me this way. And I knew in my heart I had done actually nothing wrong to deserve whatever kind of bullshit he was trying to put on me to guilt trip. Anyway, we broke up. And then, God, something like 10 plus years later, some random chick hits me up, and she's like, "Hey, were you this person's girlfriend back in high school?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm his soon-to-be ex-wife. Did he ever hit you?" And I was like, "No, he never hit me, but I do remember one time where I thought he was going to hit me." And she's like, "Oh shit," because I guess what was going on for her was she was in the process of leaving him or had just left him, and was trying to build a case against him that he was not fit to have custody of their child. Apparently what had happened from her point of view, which I believe, sorry, but I'm going to believe the girl, but she said that he would get angry with her all the time, he would hit her, and he would throw things at her and smash things where the baby's crib was like right by where she was at. And so she just laid out this whole entire story of their relationship, which very well could have been mine, because he had like done the whole promise ring thing to me. We didn't technically get engaged, but he had like done the whole, we're in high school, I promise that, when we're older, I'll propose to you proper like. And so I had like that promise ring or whatever. So it could have been me. This could have been my future. And so, yeah, it gave validity to what I think I was picking up on. And that was crazy. That was crazy to think that he really did go down that path, because just the manipulation and the gaslighting and talking down to me, But at that time, I would take anything, because being talked down to, treated poorly, was better than being emotionally abandoned or physically abandoned by him. So, I got into several other relationships. All of it was the same. And it's not to say that after my ex-husband that I told you about in the last episode, it's not to say that after that I was cured and only had good relationships after that, because I sure as hell didn't. When it came to romantic relationships, I sure as hell didn't. But they just never got that bad again. In no particular order, I dated a guy who we went to high school together and later met up in a different state at a different time, totally unbeknownst to each other, and we're like, hey, what are you doing here? And I didn't want to be alone, and he paid me some attention, but he was kind of aloof, and I think that the chase of getting somebody who's emotionally unavailable to like win him over so that he would like me and like love me the way that I guess I had always hoped my dad would. I guess that was a bit of a chase that I went after for quite some time. And when we were dating, he would be MIA for stretches of time and then not be MIA, and it would not be anything where it was like days at end where he wouldn't respond, but it would be like long hours, like 6, 8, 12 hours in a day where I'd send a message and then he would wait that long to get back, and then it would be like whatever, and then if I surprised him at his work, he was like, hey, what are you doing? This is my friend. And then when we went to a mutual friend's wedding at one point back in our hometown, he would not dance with me on the dance floor and was really cold to me. But, you know, me, I was like, well, I'll just give him sex and he'll like me. Yeah, no. That was sex was a way that I thought I could get a guy to like me. And so I would have sex with people when I probably shouldn't have, because I thought, well, this is how you get a guy to like you. And anyway, so I did that with him, and come to find out, what he had told me was his ex-girlfriend or ex-fiance or something to that effect, something where it was a pretty important relationship. They had recently broken up when we started talking. And so I thought, okay, everything's fine. I wasn't very emotionally mature at the time, nor relationshiply mature. But his ex reached out to me and was like, hey, so he's been with me this entire time. Just thought you should know. And I was like, cool, you can have him because I'm not getting involved, right? Yeah, I should have known. Like ladies, just side note, if he's into you, you will have no doubt that he's into you. And if your gut's telling you something's up, something doesn't feel right, listen to your fucking gut. Your fucking gut knows the shit. So anyway, then there's another relationship that was about a year, give or take, but it was on and off. I kept thinking, actually the first time he broke up with me, it was completely out of the blue. Had no inkling that there was anything wrong. I think we were together for like 4 or 5 months before this happened. And all of a sudden he acted weird the next day and was like, we need to break up because you didn't know who my boss was. Like when I introduced you at a Christmas party, you asked him what he did and you embarrassed me. And I was like, what the fuck? But naive, dumbass me, pardon my French, was like, don't leave me. I'll do whatever it takes. Don't leave me, right? Because I couldn't be abandoned. But we got back together after a few weeks. We would be together again for another 4 weeks maybe, and then he would break up with me again. Well, you have a bleeding disorder, so we can't have children together. Okay. And then I would be like, but please just take me back. We love each other so much. We're so great together. Then we'd be back and it would be the honeymoon again. And then all of a sudden he'd break up with me again. Well, I need to break up with you because your student loan debt is so high. And I'd be like going to the bank to prove him wrong. See, you don't have to break up with me. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? What the fuck was I thinking where I didn't have enough self-worth to go, oh, you don't want to be with me because of some dumbass reason like I didn't know who your boss was, or I have a medical disorder that most likely there's nothing wrong with it, like people live with this kind of disorder, or I have student loan debt that will never be your debt because that's not how this shit works. Like, no, I shouldn't have to prove anything. I should just be enough. But alas, that didn't happen. And then let's see, what other kind of relationships did I get in? One where I didn't even really like the guy, but it was better to be with him than to be with nobody because my friend had abandoned me. I had a really good friend, and when this person would drink, they would say and do things that were hurtful, like calling myself and our other friends names, doing things like, throwing fits and throwing objects, and sometimes, just treating me poorly when they were drinking, and sometimes treating me poorly when they weren't drinking. And I said to this friend, we had already had one talk about it because they had been so nasty and mean in their words to me when they were drinking that we had to sit down and have a talk. And this friend was apologetic, and so I gave them another try. And then another situation came up where they said really hurtful things while they were drinking, and in that time I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I letting a friend treat me like this? And so all I had said to the friend was, I need some space. I'm not saying that we're not friends. I'm just saying that right now I can't have the conversation for us to make amends on this situation. And so I asked for space, and they didn't want space. They wanted resolution, and it felt too emotionally dangerous at the time. I could sense an underlying rage, which is what would come out when they were drinking, is this intense rage. And I just said, I'm not ready yet. I understand that you're upset with me and you feel abandoned by me, that I'm the one being cold to you, and I understand that that's a problem for you. But I have to say that I'm not at a place at this moment for any sort of constructive move forward. I need time to cool off and feel safe. And then they said back to me, if you can't help resolve this in this moment, then I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I said, okay. And so in essence, we abandoned each other, because in that moment I said, I need to be true to myself. And to be true to myself was to not put you ahead of me anymore. And to be true to myself was to say, I need a timeout, and this may not last forever, but it's definitely going to last for a little bit. And their truth was, that's not good enough for me. I need to talk about this now. And so they felt like I abandoned them because I wasn't supportive in their time of need. And I can understand that. However, that was one of the times I think I actually stood up for myself and said, I always put people ahead of me. There have been definitely a group of friends in my lifetime where that hasn't been the case, where it has been relatively a mutual friendship. And so I don't want people to think that I don't have plenty of friends, especially folks that are listening, unless you are like, oh yeah, that's definitely my story. Then I've had a lot of friends along the way where it has been a mutual friendship. But this was one where, for the most part, it wasn't a mutual friendship. And I needed time and I needed space, because I would have been abandoning myself more than I already had been if I didn't take the space to reflect. And so I did. And I lost all the friends in that moment that were attached to this person, because this person guilt-tripped my other friends to say, if you're going to invite Lindsay to a mutual party, then I'm not going to be there. And technically, this person had introduced me to all the other folks. And so I got abandoned by all of my friends in a strange place where I didn't have very many connection here. And that was really painful. I was alone for a long time. It kind of feels a lot like what COVID feels like to many people right now, that they can't have connection. I was all by myself for so long. And it was a really, really hard period of time. So I ended up sort of dating a guy that was also emotionally unavailable yet again. But to me, in that moment, it felt better to have that person maybe a quarter of the way there or a third emotionally there than to have absolutely nobody in this town. So I'm going to take a small break, and I'm going to tell you how I got out of that piece. So I know this is a little bit all over the place, but hopefully it's still attached to the abandonment wound. All right, catch up soon. Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's the way I'm making my podcast right now. And it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And Anchor is going to distribute your podcast to all the major important places you would ever want, like Spotify and Apple and so many more places. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. I love it. It's so simple. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, so I pretty much had no friends for a significant amount of time, and working through my awakening process, severe depression, school, and I don't remember if it was something that I read or a teacher that I had or like some spiritual teacher, because I was going to an energy healer and this really cool lady that did Akashic Records, spiritual massages, which, my God, I swear when she massaged me, it was like she massaged every soul, every cell of my soul. God, that didn't come out right. And it was just incredible. But she had these really affordable workshops that she would do. So I don't know where this idea came from, but I doubt that it was my own. But at one point, I was barely even really dating this guy. And maybe I called it off with him, or he called it off with me, or whatever. But at one point, I just decided to start manifesting my own reality. And so what I would do is, honestly, I took myself out on dates. I treated myself the way that I had hoped that a partner would treat me, and did things that I would have done with friends if I had any. And instead of me wallowing in my apartment feeling sorry for myself, I just said fuck it. And I thought, well, if I was going out on a date and I got to pick and plan the perfect date for myself, what would I do? And granted, I had a very small budget because I was a broke-ass college student. But anyway, but I did that. And so I would take myself to the Comedy Store and be the only single female watching a comedy show on a Wednesday night. I'd take myself to my favorite sushi joint and sit at the sushi bar. And even though it felt quite lonely at times to go do this, take myself out and eat at the places I wanted to eat, or take myself to the movies, or go to a comedy show, it was by far way better to date myself in that moment than it was to wallow in my apartment by myself. And so I did that for quite some time. And I would go for bike rides with myself, and I just tried to love myself. I didn't find my husband right away just by doing this. It's not like I funny thing about manifestation is you don't just put it out there like The Secret says and sit there and wait in your room and then all of a sudden your man appears. No, you've got to set your intention, know what it looks like, know what you want, what you don't want. Don't write down what you don't want. You write as if you already have it. So this is a helpful hint about manifestation. But you write down exactly what you want. And if it's manifesting a person, I would say characteristics, not like, well, I want this guy that I've dated, or this guy needs to be, 6 foot tall and he needs to have a six pack. Like, fuck that shit. Like, yeah. Anyway, I would go with qualities of a person's personality than I would go with specific people or anything like that. But I will actually do a full episode on manifesting. But this is just an amuse-bouche for my manifesting. But so yeah, I dated myself, and that was my road to finding love for who I am as a person, and finding joy and comfort in being alone. And even though I definitely had sad days and down days, they weren't as bad because I was dating myself and loving myself. So that was really cool. But like I said at the beginning, this is an onion, and I am back at feelings of abandonment. I will likely come back here. Hopefully I don't forget, because I am a little bit on a tangent. And I'm sure my husband's going to be like, girl, you are not focused on this episode. And I know, I'm sorry. But that's just stream of consciousness for today. Because the thought of a structured actual podcast just was causing me too much anxiety. So I had to just go with it. So I want to come back to what's going on now and why now I'm feeling this sense of abandonment. But let's just go there. What's going on now? I think what's going on now is I am in a place in these last couple of months where I am trying to step into my authenticity, which is vulnerable and scary as fuck. Because as a person who I am a people pleaser. I am a people pleaser. No matter how much I have done all the work on, I am still very much a people pleaser. I may always be a people pleaser. But being your authentic self means that people will not be pleased all the time. That people will have an opinion about what you have to say. And that I'm not just changing and conforming for whatever group I'm with to make them happy or accept me or love me. That I'm not just trying to bend over backwards and play a dog and pony show for people to love and accept me. That I am starting to say, fuck this is actually who I am. And so I have been putting myself out on social media. I started this podcast, like mega and that scares me because I think obviously this is then rubbing up against all of my abandonment wounds, because if I was conforming to people and trying to make them like me by feigning either interest in total or feigning the extent of the interest I had in certain things, or allowing people to do or say things that maybe were offensive to me, or I didn't like what they had to say, or I had opinions and I just kept my mouth shut. Instead of doing that, I am slowly beginning to open my mouth up and say how I feel, or not say, not pretend anymore. And so if I got abandoned for doing what I thought was what you're supposed to do in society, of making yourself small so that people will like you, then you better believe that by starting to come into my power and to speak my voice, that I am terrified that I'm going to be abandoned. Now, I am very grateful one for my husband because I have a rock. And I know that even if the world crumbles around me, that he still loves me and accepts me for who I am, because he is the only person in this entire world right now on this earth that knows me fully. I think he knows me like 85, 90%. I think that I know myself like 90, 95%. So there's obviously a piece of me that I don't see within myself. And there's probably a small chunk of me still that I don't fully share with him. But out of everyone, he knows me the best and he loves me the most. So I know I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have him. I think that I would feel I feel way too scared if I didn't have at least one person on my side. But I do have a group where I do have some folks in my life, some new and some that have known me for a while, that are loving me exactly for who I am right now and for how much that they know of me. And so that has helped me to be able to sort of start to put myself out there. But it makes total sense why the last couple months I have been like ripe with abandonment wounds left, right, and center. Like I am an open abandonment wound all over my body. And so when the breeze just blows just even a smidge, I'm like, I'm getting abandoned. Oh, see, more proof that I'm not lovable. Oh, see, more proof that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Oh, more proof that I'm going to fuck up somebody's life by stepping into my authenticity. Like all of that. So it's like, so right now I feel like any time that I make a post, and I'm not just saying strangers. Yeah, it's a little bit of a like, oh wow, I went on TikTok and I got 55 views or 100 views or whatever. And I'm like, right? It hurts a little, I'm not going to lie, because I'm like, fuck, I'm putting myself out there. What I have to say isn't important. Maybe I just need to shut the fuck up and be quiet. If I post on Instagram and, it doesn't go very far, maybe I get like 15 likes and I'm like, then yeah, it hurts a little, I'm not going to lie. But where the abandonment wounds rub up the most is when it's people that I care about their opinion, I love, whether or not we have history or it's a new relationship. Anytime that I put myself out there and have either felt like I am supporting their career as it's coming about, or I'm supporting their authentic voice as they're putting it out there. If in some of these groups I make a post and I notice that somebody else could either do a superficial post or a super deep post, or like there's no rhyme or reason. I just put myself out there, and I notice when other people put themselves out there and they get like all this love and support, and then I don't, and then I'm like, wow, see, no matter what I do, no one will ever love me or support me. So I understand a lot of that is in my head. And I also understand that this block or this vulnerability or this fear that I have may actually be stopping people from connecting to me, because energetically speaking, I am putting up the wall already, because I'm assuming that when I put myself out there, that those that I love the most or respect the most, or those that I give, will not give back. And so I may actually be creating this reality because of my core belief that I'm going to be abandoned. So I understand that part of it may be true, that, people are busy and they are allowed to have their own lives that do not center around me. I understand that timing can be bad, that if I post something at 2 p.m. when everyone's working and somebody else posts at 6 p.m. when everyone's off of work, the person who posts at 6 p.m. is more likely to get the response from the group than me at 2. I understand that people may just not like me. People may not resonate with what I have to say. And why should they be obligated to return pleasantries if that's not authentic for them either, right? And so it's kind of like a hypocrite for me to be like, but you don't love me enough, or you you don't give me enough love and support. And I also know that I very easily too I have a hard time receiving when those that do give me love and positive feedback and support, it's hard for me to receive it. I think unworthy. I think like, what's wrong with you? I think and feel like, okay, let's move on to another topic that feels less uncomfortable. I feel narcissistic, arrogant, egotistical when people put affection and attention on me. So it's like all fucking complicated, folks. It's really complicated. And so all of that's part of the abandonment wound. Nobody owes me anything. And yet it's scary to put yourself out there and to still be rejected, even if it's in my head. And even if it's not in my head, the feeling is oftentimes rejected. And I'm feeling that a lot lately. I've been feeling that when people don't respond the way I want them to, or think that I deserve because, well, I did this, or I put myself out there for friends or family in this way, and then they didn't respond back. But how many times have I abandoned them? Like, let's be real. How many times have I abandoned my mom and my sister, right? I got so caught up with, like, I work 6 days a week, plus I'm trying to do all this social media stuff, podcasts, all this stuff that doesn't generate any income, on top of working 6 days a week, on top of, COVID and not having connection with people. And so trying to stay connected through texting and that kind of thing, and introvert to the core right here. So it's hard to like reach out to people. I'm really good at responding, horrible at initiating, and that has nothing to do with you all. But that, in essence, is me abandoning the ones that I actually love and care about, right? Because I don't make the first contact often. And so they likely feel so abandoned by me. But yeah, so like recently, in essence, I kind of dropped the ball with my mom. She just retired, and, she'd been working in a bank for, I don't know, like 20 plus years now. She's been working, and, we've been like, Mom, you should retire, you should quit, like, you don't get treated right, blah, blah, blah. And she just so happens to retire like days before my wedding. And the weeks leading up, actually the month or so leading up, like, was just a shit show trying to see if we could even get a marriage license. And then if we could, then, how are we going to make all these little ends meet while trying to work 6 days a week? So like my mom probably is sitting at home feeling like I abandoned her for her retirement, because there was no big party. Obviously, it's COVID. We live on opposite ends of the country. And, I didn't send her anything, which is kind of fucked up, to be like, hey, congratulations. Like, how many ways in which has my sister felt like I've abandoned her? I mean, I know she felt like I abandoned her when I moved from Michigan. I'm sure she feels like I left all of the family stuff for her to have to deal with. And so in essence, I'm sure she feels like I abandoned her. I feel like I don't reach out to my niece and nephew enough. And so do they feel like I have abandoned them, or I continue to abandon them? I feel like I'm not a good enough stepmom to my stepkids. Like, I haven't done enough. I haven't supported them enough. I haven't loved them enough. I haven't reached out to them enough. And then sometimes I feel like I do too much, like I annoy the shit out of them. So this, it's very complicated. But then all my friends, and it's like, people are like, but I want to spend time with you. And I'm like, yeah, but COVID, lung collapse, like death and COVID, and trying to figure out how to navigate that and not being a very good friend. And so it feels quite entitled and shitty and hypocritical of me to be like, but I'm feeling abandoned. And yet knowing that I am doing the same, if not worse, to many of the people that I feel abandoned by right now. Yeah, so there. I guess I actually did say it, and I actually did go there. I want to end on this, at the end of the day, the reality for everything when it comes to abandonment, when it comes to everything as it relates to mental health or spirituality or any of that stuff, is we first have to show up for ourselves, right? So if my core trigger at this moment is abandonment, feeling abandoned by others, then the question becomes, in what ways am I abandoning myself? In what ways have I been abandoning myself for 20 plus years? Now, I don't think that goes so much for children, because I don't think that kids have a lot of agency over their life, control, money to do things, or even the mental fortitude or training or maturity to know hey, if I'm feeling depressed, in what way have I let myself down, or whatever. But I think it's, as an adult, that's a great question to ask yourself, is whatever core feeling that you're getting, in what way are you doing it to yourself, right? And so for abandonment, how have I abandoned myself? In a lot of ways. One is I'm abandoning myself by not being gentle with myself during this process, to not sit down for longer periods of time, even with just my hand on my heart, and to just be with myself. Not to meditate with a purpose, not to go and do a shamanic journey, not to bury myself in some sort of game on my phone or show on Netflix, or how many likes did I get on my Instagram, or how much love did I get on my TikTok. Oh, none. Okay, yep, keep going on. How many people have listened to my podcast? Oh, okay, yeah, no. I'm abandoning myself in all of those moments where I am not just being alone with myself, by not showing myself love and compassion, that this is a difficult thing to be open and vulnerable, that there may be some past life stuff coming up that is scary as a woman of spiritual nature. Think about the witch wound, and how many of us can relate to possibly being a witch in a past lifetime, or if you don't resonate with past lifetimes, that there isn't a long lineage of women having their voice suppressed for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And so even if it's not a past life, it is a reality for most women in this world, is that our voices don't count, our voices don't matter, and we have, in essence, been quiet. And so to speak out is scary as hell, because it can lead to abandonment, it can lead to emotional death, and it has led to far too many women who have physically died by speaking out their truth. So it's terrifying. And yet, instead of me sitting here as a psychologist, giving myself some love and compassion and doing exactly what I tell my clients to do, 12 times in a day on my work days, love yourself, be gentle with yourself. Nope. Instead, I'm like, why you feel abandoned? Why you shouldn't feel abandoned right now? Why you feel entitled to anyone caring about what you have to say? Man, I'm still doing it to this day. Shouldn't, all over myself, and it stinks. And so I'm abandoning myself by doing that. I'm abandoning myself by finding distractions, to spending the actual amount of time that I want to before I start my day, to ground, to meditate, maybe even to journal. My God, I haven't journaled in a long time. It's been a couple of months since I've journaled, and I have some other deep core wounds that are coming up right now that I really should journal about, so that I can try to work through it. I'm abandoning myself with that. And so, in essence, sometimes I'm abandoning myself by not connecting more with the ones that I love. Because I think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Or, oh, they're too busy. Or, oh, I'm too busy, right? So, as with most things, it always starts with ourselves first. And then once we can do it for ourselves, we are therefore able to do it for others. So if feeling abandoned is a lifelong problem that you have been trying to manage, or if it is something you resonate with at the current present moment, then I ask you to heed my words, not my actions, like a parent would, right? Do as I say, not as I do. So do as I say. And hold me accountable when I say that we all should be asking ourselves, in what ways are we abandoning ourselves right now? In what ways are we not showing up for ourselves to give ourselves love and compassion and kindness? Because right now, this world sucks. And it's a really tough time for everybody, no matter where you're at or what you're doing. In what ways are you staying small so that you'll fit in? And in what ways are you ignoring all the love and support that you actually do have? All the ways in which people do really care about you, and they show it to you. Not just say it, but they actually show up for you, and you are ignoring it because you cannot receive. And so with that, I think I shall end for the evening. And hopefully this is a little lighter than last time. And hopefully next week will be a good week to pick up about manifesting and get more in depth about how to manifest, how to create abundance in love and money for yourself. And if not, I'll figure out something else and probably freak about it all Sunday, deciding whether or not I want to talk about it. But anyway, I hope this was fun. I appreciate you all listening, and I really, again, just want to thank everyone for reaching out to me and letting me know that the message that I had last week, no matter how difficult it was, that it was meaningful for you all, and it made the struggle that I went through this week way more worth it than doing that alone. So thank you all so much. Thank you for listening, and just never forget that the light is always within you. Take care, everybody.